Hi everyone, I'm Wendy. Welcome back to Show Me Mo Vegan, where I make easy, whole food vegan meals. And today I have a dump and go soup recipe for you. Yes, I understand it's the middle of summer, so you might not be thinking of soup. But if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet and cooking a lot of your food at home, you need fast, easy meals that you can cook up in large quantities so you're not spending all day every day in the kitchen. My answer to that is soup, because it's always fast and easy, it's always delicious, and that means it's always soup season, in my opinion. The hardest part of this recipe is prepping the veggies. And even that really isn't all that difficult, as long as you learn some chopping skills, which is a great skill to have. First, I'm chopping an onion. I have a red onion, but you could use whatever onions you have. You can make this prep even easier if you want to buy pre-chopped vegetables. Most of these can be found in the fresh or frozen section of most grocery stores. Next, I'm chopping some celery, which you can also find pre-chopped. If it's frozen, it usually comes along with onions and carrots, which would be fine. Next up, my recipe calls for white button mushrooms, but all I had today were cremini, so that's fine. You can use whatever mushrooms you like. I'm chopping these up pretty fine just because I personally don't like large chunks of mushrooms, but this is your soup, you're in charge, so cut the pieces to whatever size you prefer. Then I have a red bell pepper, but you can use whatever color bell pepper you like, and once again, you can usually find it pre-chopped. Of course, the pre-chopped veggies might be a little more expensive than chopping it yourself, so like I said, learning how to chop is a great skill for maintaining this lifestyle. Here I have some cauliflower, and again, I like to chop this up into pretty small pieces, but you're in charge in your own kitchen, so chop it up however you like. And finally, a bunch of garlic. You can add as much as you like. I think my recipe calls for 3 to 4 cloves, but these were really tiny, so I have about 6 here. I'll be cooking this soup in a large Dutch oven. I think this one is 7 quarts, but any large pot will do. And I'll set that right next to my cutting board, so as I start chopping, I can just throw everything in. After all the veggies are in, I'll go ahead and throw in my spices. As always, I'll put a link to this recipe in the description box below with the amounts, but I'm adding cardamom, coriander, cumin, turmeric, cinnamon, onion powder, black pepper, and finally black cumin seed. I'm not sure if you can buy this pre-ground, but what I have are the whole seeds, so I'm grinding those in a spice grinder. If you don't have black cumin seeds, you could omit this. They do have a very strong and unique flavor, but the soup would be tasty without it as well. I decided to try this spice out after learning about it from Dr. Greger. Check out his book, How Not to Diet, to learn more about black cumin seed. I'm also throwing in about half a can of tomato paste. And I actually love the tomato paste that comes in these little jars because you can just put the lid back on and throw it in the fridge. Just be sure to use it in the next few days. Then the last thing we need to prep is just to rinse our red lentils. I like to rinse them until most of the bubbles start to go away, and you can use this time to look around and make sure there are no stones or anything in your lentils. I usually don't find anything, but it's always a good idea to look. So we'll add those red lentils in. I'll take this over to the stovetop before adding the liquid, just so it's easier to carry. For the liquid, I'm doing a combination of veggie broth and water. In my recipe, I suggest 4 cups of veggie broth and 2 cups of water. Most boxes of broth come in 4 cups, but today I'm using this plant-strong veggie broth, and those are only about 2 cups. So I'm going to use 2 boxes of that plus 2 cups of water. Since we're cooking the lentils right in the soup, we do need quite a bit of water because they will absorb a lot. But if you want to start with a little less liquid, you can always add more later. And then I'm also adding a half a bag of frozen spinach. You could use whatever greens you like. Kale would work as well, and you can also use fresh greens if you have them. If you're using fresh greens, I would wait until the end and just wilt those in. I'll cover this and bring it to a boil. Once it's boiling, I'll turn it to a simmer and let it cook for about 30 minutes. The red lentils only really need about 15 minutes to cook, but I like to let it cook for at least 30 minutes to really develop all the flavors. Periodically check on it and give everything a stir, and this is where you can check if you want more liquid. Remember, it's easy to add more liquid in, but it's hard to take it away. So start with a little less and add more later as you need. And I like to serve this soup over rice or another whole grain. Usually I have some kind of whole grain already cooked and in the fridge, so I can just pull that out anytime to add to my meals. But now that our soup needs 30 minutes to cook, it doesn't need constant supervision, so you can get some rice going as well. My two favorites are either short grain brown rice or brown basmati rice. For either one of these, I take 2 cups of brown rice with 2.5 cups of water in my 6-quart Instant Pot and cook that at high pressure for 22 minutes. I usually let it natural release, but you want to at least let it natural release for 5 or 10 minutes, but then you can do a quick release. The last thing I'm adding to my soup is a little rice vinegar. I'll put about 1 to 2 tablespoons in, and then stir it up. It smells so good. Now it's time to give it a little taste. This soup is really flavorful. It's really warming and comforting, plus it has so much great nutrition in it. If you haven't used the black cumin seed before, just beware that it does have a pretty unique and strong flavor, so you might want to adjust that if you haven't tried it before. This soup, like all of my recipes, is really flexible, so swap out ingredients however you like. As you saw, I swapped cremini mushrooms for white button mushrooms. You could use different vegetables altogether or just leave some of them out. I love the lentils in here because lentils cook so quickly that they can cook right in the soup. But if you don't like red lentils, you could use a different type of lentil or another bean altogether. If you're using other types of beans, just be aware you might want to use canned beans or already pre-cooked beans, because dried beans take a really long time to cook. The purpose of this recipe is to be fast and easy, which is one of the reasons I love lentils. But play around with it and have fun. As always, I love it when you leave comments to let me know what you think. Feel free to like this video and subscribe for more whole food vegan meal ideas. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.